Hello. Today I invite you to join me on a special journey. A journey that requires no faith, no theories, all you need is to be yourself. Right here, right now, in this very moment. Do you know that every day we are racing against time? Against our thoughts, against our worries, and we never have enough time to stop, to breathe, to truly live in the moment? But there is a path that can help you find peace in these simple moments. It's the path of Zen meditation. A path not for searching for anything outside, but for discovering yourself, for finding tranquility within your own soul. Do you want to discover this secret? Take a deep breath, relax your body, and let me guide you into the world of Zen meditation, where stillness is the greatest awakening. Have you ever wondered, if you remove all beliefs, if you let go of faith in heaven, in a savior, what remains in a religion? Zen, or meditation, is the answer to that. A religion that doesn't look like a religion. There are no rigid doctrines, no deities to worship, no promises of rewards after death. Zen doesn't require you to believe. It only invites you to awaken. Right now, in this very moment, no blind faith is required. No journey to seek a faraway paradise. All you need to do is return to your breath, to your steps, to a genuine look. That's why Zen meditation is called the religion without a religion, because instead of asking you to believe, it gives you an opportunity to discover for yourself, to experience for yourself, to see for yourself. You won't find fixed answers in Zen, only doors that open, and you are the one who steps through. Just like the Buddha, who didn't encourage belief, but stirred curiosity. He didn't give people the truth, but asked questions to shake up their preconceived views. What is the true self? What in life is eternal? Why do we keep seeking something without ever fully living with what we already have? He didn't teach people to escape suffering, but to face it head on, without fear, without judgment. For the Buddha, there is no salvation from the outside, only awakening from within, and you don't need to go to a temple. You don't need complicated rituals. You only need a moment of true presence. A moment is enough. Because in that moment, you will see, the greatest things are happening. Right here, right now. Zen doesn't give you a map. Because in Zen, there is no destination. There is only the path, and every step you take is the practice of meditation. No one else can walk for you. No spiritual leader can live for you. And there is no absolute truth passed from one person to another. Because truth, according to Zen, cannot be spoken. It can only be directly realized through your own life experience. Imagine someone telling you about the sweetness of an apple. They can describe it with thousands of words, but if you've never taken a bite of that apple, you will never understand. Zen is the same. It's not about listening to teachings, it's about tasting. And so, Zen always invites you to ask questions, not to find answers out there, but to gradually let go of the illusions you are holding on to. Let go of the concepts of me, of right, wrong, of high, low, so that one day, you can touch the pure stillness inside, where there is nothing to hold on to. Yet it is strangely full. Zen doesn't promise safety. It can make you feel lost, as everything you once trusted starts to shake. But it is in that emptiness that you will truly have the chance to begin living. Just like a Zen master once said, "Before enlightenment, I saw the mountain as the mountain, and the river as the river. When I began to learn the way, I saw that the mountain was no longer the mountain, and the river was no longer the river. But when enlightenment came, I saw that the mountain was still the mountain, and the river was still the river. You don't need to be different. You only need to look deeper, to see what has always been there. And sometimes, all you need to do is stop, in just one breath, to step into Zen. No frills, no theories. It's just a person sitting still, knowing they are breathing. In that journey, the Buddha didn't give a command, nor did he create a powerful image for others to worship. He simply placed a mirror before each person, for them to see themselves clearly. He didn't ask you to believe in anything, but asked, how are you living? Are you truly awake in every daily action? Or are you just being swept away by unconscious habits? Are you present in your life? Or are you just repeating worries that someone else has passed down to you? For the Buddha, the way is not found in scriptures, but in the way you drink a cup of tea. Take a step, listen to the birds singing in the morning. These are not grand things, but they carry a power that can change your life, if you are willing to stop and be aware. The truth in Zen does not come from words, nor does it come from believing in what someone else has realized. The truth only opens up when you have the courage to let go of all the concepts you have learned. To look at life with eyes that have never been tainted by prejudice. Zen does not try to explain life, it invites you to step right into it. Unprotected, without avoiding it, because if you are still trying to understand, you will remain on the outside. Only when you are silent, fully present, will life reveal itself as it truly is. The Buddha once remained silent when asked about the existence of the soul or the afterlife. Not because he didn't know, but because he understood that those questions do not lead to awakening. They only pull you further from the present. The answer is not in words, but in the aliveness of the present moment. And if you are still enough to realize, you will see, every breath is a miracle. Every moment is a gateway to deep truth. Zen does not ask you to become someone else. Zen gently reminds you to return to yourself. No more, no less, no embellishments, no trying to prove anything. And when you stop trying to become, you begin to be. No titles, no roles, nothing but pure, simple presence, like sunlight shining through the cracks in the leaves. And perhaps, it is in this simplicity that you truly touch freedom. Freedom in Zen is not about doing what you like, but about no longer being bound by desires and fears. It is when you can sit still, amidst the many pulls of life, and your heart remains undisturbed. It is when you no longer feel the need to prove anything. No longer chase after illusions of success, fame, or happiness from the outside. All you need is a steady breath, a peaceful morning, a flower blooming at your doorstep, and that's enough. Zen does not ask you to understand life. It only asks that you live it, fully, sincerely, awake. It only asks that you know, every passing moment is precious. And nothing repeats itself. It only asks that you don't miss yourself while you are busy searching for something else. Because life does not wait for you to be perfect before it begins. It is happening, right now. While you are breathing, listening, feeling, and if you can stop, even just once, to truly listen to the sigh of your own breath, truly feel the sunlight touching your skin, the distant bird song outside the window, then you have stepped through the door of Zen. No rituals, no doctrines, no teacher to guide you, because the greatest teacher is always within you. It's just that, all this time, you have never been silent long enough to listen. Zen doesn't add anything to your life. Zen gently removes confusion, prejudices, and questions you don't need to answer. And then, when everything settles, you will see, you've never been lacking anything. You've never been in the wrong place. All you need to do is return and be present, fully. There is no identical path between two people. And Zen does not lay out a roadmap for you. It doesn't tell you how to live, it only reminds you, live authentically. Not for others, not according to expectations, not chasing any ideal, but live according to your inner wisdom. Awakened from the stillness within. In this noisy world, that is an act of courage. Courage to not react according to habit. Courage to not rush to fill the emptiness. Courage to look within, and not turn away when you see the imperfections. Zen does not teach you to escape suffering. On the contrary, Zen invites you to stay right in that suffering. To see it as it is. No added fear, no removal of any truth. Because only when you stay long enough with the darkness, will you see the light from within you begin to shine. This is not the light you borrow from scriptures or the teachings of others, but the light you discover in the moments of peace amidst the storms of your inner world. And when that light is strong enough, you no longer need answers. Questions like, who am I? Where did I come from? What is the meaning of life? Gradually fade away. Not because they are answered, but because you no longer feel compelled to answer them. Because you have seen that living fully with a falling leaf, with a soft breeze, with a sincere smile, is more important than any profound philosophy. And sometimes, it is when you stop searching that the truth gently arrives, without words, without names, just a profound, clear, and simple presence. Zen does not come to change you. Zen only comes for you to realize you have always been complete. Each person is a living scripture, not needing to be written down, but simply lived rightly. And every present moment is a meditation hall without walls, where you can touch awakening at any time, as long as you return. And from that perspective, the practitioner of Zen gradually learns an important art, the art of letting go. Not letting go as an escape, but letting go as an act of wisdom. Letting go of old definitions of yourself. Letting go of the need to be right, to win, to be superior. Letting go of the past that has passed and the scenarios of the future that have not yet come. And then, only a silent mind remains, like a calm lake between the mountains, where things reflect clearly, not distorted by any interpretation. In that letting go, you do not become someone else. You become yourself, purer and clearer than ever. The roles gradually fall away. The masks are no longer necessary. And you begin to live, not as someone trying to become someone else, but as someone who touches each moment with all their presence. Every gaze you offer, every word you speak, every gesture you make, carries the mark of a conscious life. That is Zen in daily life. Not separated, not lofty, just living, truly living. People often think of Zen as sitting still under a tree, in the quiet of the mountains. But in reality, you can practice Zen while washing dishes, walking through the streets, listening to the cry of a child, or looking into someone's eyes full of tears. As long as you are truly there, not rushing past, not separating yourself from the experience that is unfolding. Because every moment contains the entire universe. And when you are present enough, You don't just see things, you see yourself in them. Zen does not take you to any particular place. It brings you back to this body, to this mind, to the life that is passing by with each second. Without waiting, it does not turn you into an enlightened being, but makes you realize you yourself are already a part of that enlightenment. Not lacking, not separate. All it takes is awakening. All it takes is remembering. And perhaps it is because Zen does not present any set ideal that it can reach everyone, anywhere, in any circumstance, no matter who you are, what you believe in, or how many spiritual paths you have walked. Zen can still be a stopping point where you don't need to search anymore. All you need is the courage to look at reality with clear eyes, and to live with yourself as if it were the first time. No mystery, no frills, no mythology, just a gentle awakening. In every breath, in every moment that you are truly present. In the early stages of encountering Zen meditation, many people often ask, "What do I need to do? How should I meditate properly? How long will it take to attain enlightenment?" But these very questions reveal a profound misunderstanding. Because Zen is not a path to attain something in the future. Zen does not encourage you to seek enlightenment as a final reward. On the contrary, Zen teaches you to let go of seeking. Only when you stop, no longer chasing an idea of what is right or wrong, high or low, will you truly see what is happening right before your eyes. Zen is not a technique, and it is not a method to improve yourself according to any set standard. It is a return to exactly what is, no changes, no judgment, no desire for anything different. When you sit still and feel the birds chirping outside the window, the fan turning steadily, the beat of your heart in your chest, at that moment, you are meditating. There is nothing special, no blinding light, no miracle, just a person, living fully in their body and mind, with complete presence. New practitioners often feel confused. Am I meditating correctly? But in Zen, there is no right or wrong, there is only whether you are awake or not. And this wakefulness cannot be measured by the time spent sitting, the number of practice sessions, or the pleasant sensations you may have. It appears quietly, like mist, when your mind stops searching, stops resisting, stops defining everything that is happening. At that moment, you are no longer an observer standing outside life, but an active part of it. Zen does not turn you into a transcendent being. Zen brings you back to being human, a human who knows how to breathe with full gratitude, who knows pain without resistance, who knows sadness without stiffening up, who knows how to laugh without needing a reason. And because of this, the deeper you go into Zen, the less you try to become something special. Because you realize, the ordinary is the most miraculous thing. A bowl of hot rice, a light rainy afternoon, a moment of sitting still, doing nothing. These things, when seen with the eye of awareness, are Zen. And as one Zen master once said, there is no path to enlightenment. Because the step you are taking, if you are truly present, is already enlightenment. And when you begin practicing without expecting to achieve anything, you will realize something very profound. The seeing in Zen does not come from the eyes, but from the stillness in the heart. A stillness that is undisturbed by thoughts, not clouded by desires. In that stillness, you no longer distinguish between inside and outside. There is no longer an I observing the world, but only the living flow of the present, undivided, untouchable, Zen does not ask you to abandon the world, but teaches you to live fully in it. With a completely different mindset. You still go to work, still face your loved ones, with pressure, with joy, and with sorrow, but you are no longer swept away by it. You are present, you see clearly everything that comes and goes in your life. Like clouds passing in the sky. No need to hold on. No need to push away. Just see, and let it pass on its own. And the strange thing is, when you stop trying to control that flow, a gentle peace begins to spread. Not from the outside, not something you create, but something that has always been there, just waiting for you to be still enough to recognize it. It is the silence that is independent of circumstances. A smile inside, even when life wavers. A faith without reason, because you no longer have to run anywhere to find peace. Living in Zen is not about separating from life, but immersing yourself in it with an unattached mind. It is seeing the impermanence of everything, but still loving completely. It is knowing that everything will change, but not regretting when something beautiful passes by. It is understanding that happiness is not in holding on, but in the ability to let go, with a smile of freedom. And so, you don't have to wait for life to be settled before finding peace. Because Zen does not wait for you to reach a destination. Zen only asks you, right now, are you living? In the moment you truly live, not to achieve something, not to become someone, but just to be present, at that very moment. You are stepping into the land that Zen has always pointed to. Not a place, not a lofty spiritual state, but a very real depth of everyday life. There, you do not need to strive to be positive, nor do you need to hide the imperfections. Everything within you, bright and dark, strong and weak, can be seen, embraced with compassionate presence. And this non-judgmental gaze is the deepest healing. You don't need to try to change yourself. You only need to be patient enough to stay with yourself, sincerely. Zen does not direct you towards controlling the mind, but teaches you to realize, you are not your thoughts. Thoughts still come and go, like waves on the surface of the water. But you are the water itself. Deep, vast, not pulled by any shape the waves create. And when you see that, you no longer fear the fluctuations of your inner world. You let them come and go, just as they are, not trying to push them away, not trying to hold onto them. You become the witness, but not separate, like a tree standing still in the rain, wet, but not complaining, silent, but full of life. That is why those who have walked with Zen for many years often carry a unique tranquility. They do not need to speak much. They do not need to show anything special. But in the way they sit, they breathe, they listen, a presence of complete, humble, and sincere being radiates, because they no longer wish to change the world according to their will. They only want to live wholeheartedly in each small thing. And from that smallness, the deepest thing blooms, like a lotus rising from the mud. Without blemish. When you understand this spirit, you will see, Zen is not found in the fixed moments of sitting meditation. Zen is the way you step through an ordinary day. It is how you speak to someone without hiding yourself. It is how you smile, not to please, but simply because your heart truly wants to smile. And it is these small things that are the deepest essence of Zen. No theory, no form, no need to prove anything. All you need is to live, like a candle naturally emitting light, gently, naturally, and completely sincerely. Then, at some point in this journey of return, You will realize that you have stopped searching for an answer. Because the answer is no longer necessary. Not because you have understood everything, but because you have begun to accept everything as it is. Life does not need to be decoded like a puzzle, but simply needs to be lived like a piece of music, sometimes gentle, sometimes chaotic, but always containing the richness of life in every note. And if you are truly present, you will hear the quiet whisper of truth, not from words, not from books, but from the deep stillness inside your heart, where there is no longer any need to be anything else. Zen does not bring you to an external truth, but leads you back to the truth inside. In that place, there is no dazzling light of knowledge, no affirmation of identity, no system for you to cling to. There is only you, a complete person, breathing, walking, living in this world, just as it is. And it is precisely in that utter simplicity that you will clearly see that what you have been searching for all along has never been far away. It has never left you. It is always here, in every heartbeat, every whisper of the wind, every gentle touch of a kind glance. You begin to live more slowly, not because you are lazy or avoiding life, but because you no longer want to miss out. No longer wanting to drift through life like a sleepwalker, swept away by desires and worries. You stop, you look deeply, you touch the little things that you once overlooked. And in that gaze, the world suddenly becomes more alive. A falling leaf becomes a scripture. A stranger's smile becomes a Zen master. Everything can be a teacher, if you are open enough to learn. Zen is not the goal of intelligent people, nor is it a privilege for those who diligently practice. Zen quietly waits in the hearts of those who are willing to sit down with themselves, without goals, without illusions. And when you truly sit down, not to meditate, not to heal, not to attain enlightenment, but just to sit, then in that very moment, the miracle has already begun. Not from anywhere else, but from you, from your own simplicity and sincerity. When you sit down with no expectations, not hoping for anything to happen, not trying to create any special state, that moment becomes the gateway to deep reality. You no longer try to become quiet, but realize that stillness has always been there, only covered by demands, calculations, and the unceasing voices in your head. Zen does not add anything, but it takes away so much. It takes away the confusion you no longer need. It takes away the shell you once thought was you. It takes away the desires that caused you suffering. And when there is nothing left to take, only one person remains, naked, fragile, but strangely whole. From there, you no longer need to try to be awake. You just need to not forget. Not forget where you are, what you are doing, and what you are living among. A person pouring water with a peaceful mind, that is Zen. A person walking without judgment in their heart, that is Zen. A person who listens to another's pain without trying to fix it, without intervening with advice, that is even more Zen. Because awakening is not a sacred state to be admired, but a complete presence in the most ordinary things. And it is that ordinariness, when lived authentically, that becomes the most beautiful. No one teaches you to live this way. A Zen master can only point to the moon, but you must look up yourself. And when you look deep enough, you will see that nothing is separate. You are no longer a small I trying to reach enlightenment, but an inseparable part of the flowing life. Your sadness is not just yours. Your joy is not just yours. Everything connects. Everything depends on one another to exist. And in that seeing, Your heart expands, like a field without fences, with enough space for everything to pass through, without holding on to anything. Then, there will be moments when you sit in the middle of an ordinary day and suddenly feel a deep sense of gratitude. Not because you have obtained something special, but because you see clearly that you have always had enough. You no longer need to wait until everything is perfect to feel peace. You no longer need anything else to deserve tranquility. You just need to remember, you are alive. And that aliveness, when fully recognized, is the most miraculous thing that no words can ever fully express. And when you live with that awareness long enough, you will no longer be in a hurry. You don't need to be faster than anyone, better than anyone, or have more than anyone. You no longer need to search for meaning in everything that happens in life, because you have stopped forcing life to have a specific purpose. You only need to live in each moment that life brings. When happy, you smile. When sad, you breathe. When you don't know what to do, you stay with yourself, without running away. And that is the power of someone who knows Zen. Not the power to change the world, but the power to remain still, right in the heart of all the fluctuations. Zen does not give you a path to escape suffering, but teaches you to look directly at suffering and walk through it gently. You do not need to eradicate suffering as an enemy, nor do you need to love it as a noble philosophy. You just need to look without fear, without resistance, without coloring it. And when you are still enough to look at your suffering without assuming the role of a victim, that suffering gradually dissolves, not because you push it away, but because you no longer cling to it to define yourself. You see clearly that suffering is part of life, just as rain is part of the sky, and you no longer need it to disappear to feel peace. True peace does not come from making everything stable. It comes from knowing you can be at peace, even when everything is not calm. You do not need to retreat into the deep forest or distance yourself from people to practice Zen. On the contrary, Zen helps you open your heart to life, not to grasp it, but to dissolve into it. And when you live this way, you begin to see clearly. Any place can be a meditation hall. Everyone can be a companion. And every moment is a miraculous lesson if you are present enough to learn. Maybe today, you can't sit still for long. Maybe you still get angry, feel sad, or worry easily. But that doesn't matter. What matters is that you know you're angry, sad, or worried. What matters is that you no longer run away from yourself. Every time you return, every time you take a deep breath with full attention, it's another step towards freedom. Not the freedom given by anyone, but inner freedom. The freedom that comes from no longer being pulled by the illusions you once thought were real. And then, little by little, you will realize that the journey is not about going anywhere, but about returning to the simplicity you once forgot amid the complexities built over time. Returning to a clear vision, no longer tainted by old wounds, by others' expectations, or by the nameless fear that silently influences every choice. You begin to live lighter, not because life becomes lighter, but because you no longer carry all the things that don't belong to you. You let everything flow naturally, and you are free like a leaf, not knowing where the wind will take you, just knowing you are flying. When you live like this, you will feel that peace is no longer a distant state, but a natural part of life. Peace doesn't come from everything going your way, but from the fact that you no longer need everything to go your way. You can sit in the middle of a busy street and still remain calm. You can be in the midst of a busy day and not lose your tranquility. You can listen to someone share their pain without being consumed by it, without rushing to fix it. Because you know, not every moment requires you to do something. Sometimes, just being present, truly being present, is the most profound act of healing. And then, you will see that you don't need to be the one who understands everything. You just need to be the one who is still enough to not miss what is happening. A drop of rain falling is enough for you to stop. A silent gaze is enough to make your heart flutter. Zen doesn't pull you away from life. It makes life more vibrant than ever. Not because everything changes, but because you've changed the way you see. No longer living half-heartedly. No longer rushing past yourself. Every day, every minute, every breath, you live as if it's your first time. And your last. And perhaps, that is the deepest essence of Zen. Not to find something extraordinary, but to awaken to the simplicity that has always been present. A heart full of gratitude. An eye that knows how to see. A soul that knows how to stop and smile, not for any reason other than being alive. Sometimes, we think that the path of practice is a long journey, requiring countless challenges, achieving many special mental states, eradicating all delusions, and reaching an absolute perfection. But with Zen, all of that, even though it may sound noble, is just a layer of clothing you are wearing. Zen does not invite you to become someone else. It only invites you to take it off. Take off the concepts of practice, enlightenment, good and bad, right and wrong, and when you have let go of everything, you don't fall into emptiness. On the contrary, you feel light, so light that you no longer carry your name, your past, or the desire to become someone in the future. You are simply yourself, undefined, shapeless, yet strangely whole. In this state, you begin to see the world differently. No longer is it a gaze from the outside looking in, but a co-presence where you are no longer separate from life. When you drink water, you are the water. When you hear the wind, you are the space that carries the sound. And when you see someone in pain, you are no longer the observer. You become a part of that pain. Not to carry it, but to see it clearly, as if you are gazing at a dewdrop in the sunlight. No intervention, no avoidance, no explanation, just looking, with a heart that has no barriers. Zen does not promise that you will escape suffering, but it teaches you to move through suffering without losing compassion. It doesn't make you cold and indifferent to change. It helps you maintain gentleness even when the world falls apart. A gentleness that is not weakness, not fragility, but deep as the ocean, firm as the mountain, warm like a small light in the darkness. And then you realize, you don't need to be strong as others think you should be. You only need to be as truthful as you truly are. This truthfulness, though it may not be perfect, carries an indescribable beauty. A beauty that is not on the outside, but in the fact that you no longer need to pretend to be anyone else. And perhaps, it is when you live with that truthfulness that you truly begin to love others with unconditional love. Not because they are good, not because they are like you, or because they give you something, but because you see the fragility in every human being. You don't need to speak. You don't need to prove your compassion. Your silent presence, your non-judgmental gaze, the way you listen without interrupting, that is the deepest compassion. And you no longer need to go far to learn compassion, because every daily interaction, if lived with awareness, is an opportunity for you to open your heart. No need for embellishment. Just be real. And when you live with that compassion long enough, you will realize that compassion is not an act to do, but a state of being to live. It doesn't begin with a determination to be kind, but with a deep enough awareness to see that no one is truly separate. When another is in pain, you also feel it. When another is happy, you are touched by a real joy. And so you no longer have to try to love, because that seeing alone is love. A love without choice, without conditions, without exhaustion. A love that doesn't need promises, nor oaths. Just a true presence in every moment of everyday life. Zen does not ask you to become a saint, nor does it push you out of the human realm. On the contrary, it teaches you to be fully human. A human who breathes with gratitude, who looks with gentleness, who speaks with sincerity, and who is silent, not because there is nothing left to say, but because they see there is nothing more to add. In that fullness, you need nothing. You only need a small space to sit still. A heart large enough to hold the parts of yourself that are not yet beautiful. And a quiet faith that everyone, no matter the pain, the brokenness, the mistakes, has the ability to return. As you dive deeper into your practice, you will begin to see nothing is ordinary. Every moment, if fully lived, is a miracle. A rainy morning, the sound of water dripping on the eaves, the warmth of tea still in your hands, all of these are doorways to reality. Not an ideal reality, not a place full of light, but reality as it is. Full of contradictions, roughness, yet also filled with tenderness if you look with eyes that ask for nothing. And that is what Zen always reminds us of. Live with what you have, as if this is the last time you will live. Because, in truth, no one knows what will come. No one knows which moment will be the last. So why not slow down? Take a deeper breath, and let your heart be soaked by the smallest things. Every sound, every light, every gentle touch on life. At that moment, you are no longer the one searching for peace. You are peace itself, not from the outside, not something to attain, but something that has always been there, waiting for you to remember. And when you live in that remembering, no longer caught up in memories, nor driven by the illusions ahead, you begin to feel lighter. Not because all suffering has vanished, but because you no longer cling to it as you once did. Things that once troubled you may still appear, but now, you no longer react by habit. You observe, you breathe, you let it pass like drifting clouds. And you realize, amidst the storms, you can still find rest. Not because the sky is calm, but because you no longer resist the winds. From here, the practice is no longer something separate from everyday life. It doesn't lie in fixed meditation sessions or certain rituals. It permeates into every small action, from the way you fold a shirt, prepare a meal, to the way you look at someone with understanding. Every action you do, when done with a mind that's not rushing, not seeking, not resisting, becomes part of Zen. And so, life no longer splits. Here is practice. There is ordinary life. Everything blends together, like water blending into water, like light no longer distinguishing where it shines or whom it illuminates. You no longer need grand reasons to live. A quiet morning, a deep breath, a moment when you see a drop of dew hanging on the edge of a leaf. That's enough to give your life meaning. And if you can live like that today, then today is already a beautiful day. You no longer demand life to give you anything more. Instead, You begin to learn gratitude, not because you should be grateful, but because you truly see that you are receiving so much. Every breath you take is a gift. Every ray of sunlight breaking through the clouds is a reminder you are alive. And that is the greatest miracle. Zen doesn't create miracles. Zen only helps you see the miracles that have always been there. Not in extraordinary things, but in the simple things you encounter every day but have unintentionally forgotten. And when you return to those things that seem so familiar with new eyes, your heart will soften, and the fear within you will subside. Not because you've learned to hide it, but because you've learned to embrace it. Zen doesn't make you superhuman. Zen brings you back to being human. A person who is calm enough to see themselves clearly, and real enough to touch others. And so, when you stop trying to become Zen, you begin to live in Zen in the most natural way. No longer struggling to calm the mind, but because you no longer do anything, the mind starts to calm. No longer striving to heal, but when you stop trying to heal, the wounds slowly begin to soothe. You no longer need to achieve enlightenment, because you clearly see enlightenment is not a destination, but how you walk right now, lightly, awake, and true. That wakefulness doesn't appear in anything extraordinary. It can show up when you're washing your hands in cool water, when you're sitting and watching the sunlight slant through the window, or simply when you're silently looking at a loved one sleeping. No need for sacredness, no need for loftiness, no need to do anything special. Just truly see without adding or taking away. Not interpreting, not forcing understanding, a seeing so clear that you surprise yourself. It turns out, life, in its purest essence, is already beautiful, mysterious, and deep enough to leave you speechless. And at that moment, you will stop seeking something else. Not because you've given up, but because you've seen clearly. Seen that everything you need is nowhere else but where you stand. Not in a distant ideal, but right in the sound of leaves falling in the yard, in the fatigue on your shoulders, in the things you once avoided and didn't want to name. When you look directly at everything, with an open heart, nothing is an enemy anymore. Nothing needs to be pushed away. Nothing needs to be resisted. Everything, including pain, regret, and the old cracks in the heart, can be part of wakefulness, if you know how to stay with it. And so, without any landmark to mark the way, without any bells to signal it, you realize that you have stepped into a different kind of life. Not brilliant, not glorious, not impressing anyone, but deep, very deep, and calm, very calm. A calm that doesn't require a quiet space, but comes from within. A life no longer controlled by fear, but guided by clear seeing. And from there, everything you do, no matter how small, contains a refined quality. No longer actions of habit, but expressions of a heart that is awake. And when you've lived long enough in this wakefulness, you begin to return to the world, not as someone searching for a place of refuge, but as someone who carries that refuge with every step. You no longer need to separate yourself from life to find peace. You step straight into it, with all its collisions, noise, and chaos, and your heart remains untroubled. Not because you've become immobile, but because you no longer waver over things that are no longer real. You still love, still hurt, still feel disappointment, still smile, but you are no longer lost in those emotions. You are present, you witness, you live. At this point, The practice of meditation is no longer limited to moments of sitting still, but becomes an inseparable part of everyday life. Every time you wash your hands, walk, listen to someone, or simply remain silent in the afternoon, you are meditating. No special conditions required, no advanced techniques needed. All you need to do is return. Return to this body. Return to this breath. Return to this moment, without bringing along the past or projecting the future. And in that simple return, you will clearly see, no moment is insignificant. No second is without the essence of life. And so, very naturally, you begin to live with the lightness of someone who no longer wants to possess. No longer trying to win over anyone. No longer needing to prove anything. Because you've seen that what matters is not what you achieve, but how you've lived. Every action you take, no longer to leave a mark, but because you cannot help but do it with complete presence. A word, a glance, a gentle touch, all become expressions of meditation. When done with a whole heart, no embellishment, no boasting, just truth, you begin to see that the people you meet, whether close or distant, are all walking their own journey. And you don't need to teach them anything. You just need to be there, as a companion, without judgment, without forcing, without fixing. Your presence, calm and bright, is the gentlest invitation for them to return to themselves. And so, you live in this world, not needing to preach, not needing to wear the label of a practitioner. But the way you live is a silent lesson for those who are still enough to feel. One day, you will no longer question what correct meditation is. And you will no longer compare yourself to anyone else. You will stop wishing for life to be calmer. And you will no longer blame yourself for moments when you were not still enough. Because you have seen this simple truth. Meditation is not a state of perfection, but a soft gaze, soft towards life, and first and foremost, soft towards yourself. You will no longer try to hold onto peace, because you know that anything you need to hold onto hasn't truly become part of you yet. And when you stop holding, stop grasping, stop forcing, then that release brings peace to your heart. You begin to live a life that is present, without needing many words. Meetings become slower, deeper, no longer rushing to conclusions. You no longer feel impatient about whether others understand you, because you no longer have the need to be understood. What you need is simple: to be real, to live without acting, without forcing, without trying to please anyone. And this truth touches the hearts of others the most, not through reasoning, but through presence. A presence that allows others to breathe a little easier, as if they too are allowed to be imperfect, allowed to let go, allowed to remain silent without needing to explain. You see clearly that practice is not about becoming someone special. Practice is about no longer being forced to become anything other than your original nature. Each person, when born, already has an irreplaceable purity. But life, fear, wounds, make us forget. And Zen is simply the journey back to remembering, not adding anything new. You don't need to achieve new realizations. You only need to gradually remove the layers of fog that have covered your eyes. So one day, you will clearly see, the light has never gone out. It is still there, in you, just waiting to be recognized. And if there's anything left after all the letting go, it's probably just a smile. Not because of joy, nor because of sadness, but because you have seen that everything just is. As it is, no need to fix, no need to resist, no need to name, a light smile. like a flower blooming for no one, like clouds drifting without a destination, like you, finally at peace enough to be yourself. In this journey, you gradually realize that life is not a destination, but each step along the way. And every step, no matter how small, contains the fullness of life. You don't need to make everything change, because in the very fact that nothing changes, you find freedom. Every moment, whether simple or challenging, carries its own unique beauty. A freshness that cannot be repeated. It's the full presence in that moment that matters. No longer needing to search for happiness elsewhere, but realizing that happiness has always been present in your own presence. When you stop trying to search, you begin to see everything around you clearly, not through the lens of judgment, but through the lens of acceptance. You see a tree, not needing to do anything to become a tree. It doesn't need to bloom to prove its life. It just needs to stand there, reaching out in stillness, and it is complete. You, too, don't need to race, don't need to struggle to achieve perfection. You only need to be present with everything you are, right now. The real change in Zen is not about transforming yourself into someone else, but about learning how to live fully with yourself. You don't need to be perfect to feel peace. You just need to accept that you are part of this flow, whole, but not holding on, free, but not separate. And when you live with this understanding, you will see that everything around you can be you, and you are them. There is no longer a boundary between I and that. Everything is part of the great life. And in this integration, you no longer seek peace from the outside. You know that peace does not come from everything being stable, but from the ability to maintain stillness amidst all the fluctuations. You don't need to separate yourself from the world to find peace. You can live right in the midst of storms and still find inner stillness. All you need to remember is that, in every breath, in every step, in every moment of life, you have always been present. And that is all that is necessary. And when you have lived in that stillness long enough, you will realize that nothing in life has to be perfect to be loved. You no longer need to achieve a certain state or complete a goal to feel valuable. You just need to live authentically and keep being present. Every moment becomes an opportunity to truly be, not to do something, but simply to feel deeply everything around you. Your gaze no longer seeks, but simply perceives. Your hearing is no longer swept away by thoughts, but listens to the sounds of life as they unfold. Each step no longer carries the weight of urgency, no longer part of a race. Instead, you walk slowly, gently, fully aware of your presence in each beat of your heart. In every breeze that passes, you no longer try to do anything other than live fully with each moment. And when you no longer want to add, no longer want to take away, you see that life is already whole and complete by itself. Like the flowers blooming in spring, life does not need to do anything to be beautiful. It is beautiful because of its very existence, because of its truth. And when you know that you, too, are part of that great life, you no longer feel like a separate I, but you merge with the unceasing flow of the universe. You no longer fear when faced with uncertainty, no longer yearn when encountering challenges. You realize that everything has its reason. Everything is leading you back to yourself. There is no path leading to enlightenment. Enlightenment is not a destination. It is simply the realization that everything you are looking for has always been present, right inside you. In every step you take, in every breath you take, and when you live with that awareness, without craving, without longing, You will see that this life, no matter how it unfolds, is already perfect. Every pain, every joy, every step along the way is part of this journey. And you no longer need to fear, no longer need to control. You simply need to live true to yourself, whole, complete, and free. And when you reach the state of wakefulness in each of those moments, you realize that life is not a series of events you need to overcome, but a continuous flow, always unfolding before you. The anxieties, the thoughts, the worries no longer have the power to control you as they once did. You no longer become a slave to your desires or fears. Everything comes and goes, but you no longer cling to it. You don't need to try to control life or find ways to make everything stable. You learn to let go and let life unfold naturally, with all the beauty and challenges it brings. Each day is a new opportunity to live fully. You don't need to wait for some future moment to feel peace, happiness, or fulfillment. Everything you need, peace, calm, understanding, is already within you. Right at this moment, the only thing you need to do is recognize it. Not with the mind, not with complicated thoughts, but with deep presence in every moment. When you no longer seek or desire, you will realize that everything you need has always been here, within you. In this life, life doesn't require you to become someone else or do something to prove your worth. You only need to live sincerely and awake. And in that sincerity, you will see that you lack nothing. You don't need to prove anything to the world or to yourself. You only need to be. And when you are, you will find yourself blending into everything. No longer separate, no longer afraid. Everything comes, and you simply need to recognize it as a gift, no matter how big or small. When you stop trying to change the world, and only change the way you perceive and approach it, you will realize that the world around you has become more beautiful, more gentle. People are no longer objects for you to compete with or judge, but companions on the path, seeking peace and life together. You begin to understand that when you change the way you see, everything around you also changes. When you stop searching for something outside of yourself, you begin to feel clearly that everything you need is already within you. There is no need to go far, no need to change your circumstances. You only need to stop and look within yourself, to see the wholeness that cannot be separated. Ordinary moments suddenly become special, from the looks exchange, from a gentle touch on life, from simple conversations. You realize that what you once considered small or insignificant actually contains great power and mystery. Life does not ask you to grasp or hold onto anything. What comes will naturally go. You learn to let each thing in life pass without being overly affected. Whether it is joy or sorrow, you no longer cling to them, but you learn to appreciate them when they arrive, and let them go when the time comes. It is in this letting go that you find freedom. Freedom is not about escaping the world, but about no longer being swept away by anything in it. When you live with this mindset, you begin to clearly see that everything can only be as it is. You don't need to impose. You don't need to change what is around you. Every person, everything, is exactly where it needs to be. And you, in each moment, are exactly where you need to be. You don't need to become anyone else. You don't need to seek some distant goal. Everything is already whole, right where you stand. Gradually, you realize that living in presence is not difficult. In fact, it is the most natural thing. When you no longer force yourself to change or control everything, you will see that life becomes lighter, simpler. Everything you need to do is simply live with awareness, with full presence in the smallest things. It is in that simplicity that you find the peace you have been searching for all along. When you live in a state of wakefulness, you begin to realize that nothing is beyond your reach. It's not something you have to search for everywhere to achieve. Everything has always been here, in this moment, just waiting for you to return and recognize it. Every step you take is no longer just movement from one place to another, but a conscious act, a greeting to the world you live in. You are no longer a person weary of goals, but someone who simply stops and lives fully in the present, no longer worrying about the future, no longer regretting the past, only you. Here, in this moment, complete and whole. Each day, you don't need to do anything other than return to yourself, not to become someone else, not to improve yourself according to some standard. You only need to be yourself, with everything you have right now. In that acceptance and love for yourself, you realize that all the things you fear, all the things you try to avoid, are really just shadows, reflections of inner rejection. When you no longer fear, when you stop judging yourself, you will see that life is not a battle to win. It is simply a journey to understand, to love, to accept everything that comes and goes, without needing to change anything. And so, you will no longer feel the need to prove yourself. You don't need to show anything. You don't need to prove to anyone who you are. You no longer live to please others. Your satisfaction comes from living true to your nature. You don't need to wear a different face to fit in. You don't need to change who you are to be accepted. It is this self-acceptance that makes you free. A freedom not from leaving this world, but from merging with it without losing yourself. You no longer need to search for perfection. You only need to live authentically. And when you live authentically, you will see that everything around you begins to reflect that authenticity. Life doesn't ask you to do anything except be present. You don't need to seek additional meaning. Because this life, the simple things you are experiencing, already hold a great truth. A flower blooming, a gentle breeze passing by, a beam of light entering a room. All of these can become sacred moments if you are awake enough to recognize them. Everything around you is part of life, and you are also part of all of these things. When you recognize this, you will no longer feel alone or lost. You will feel that you are living in a vast universe, where everything is interconnected, where there is no separation between you and the world. And deeper still, you realize that nothing is meaningless. Everything that happens has its reason. Every event, every encounter, every moment, whether joyful or sorrowful, contributes to the journey you are on. You don't need to understand everything, nor do you need to explain why things unfold the way they do. You only need to let them come, let them pass, and in that acceptance, you begin to find peace. You no longer worry about the outcome of life. You no longer fear change, because you know that everything is part of an endless flow. Everything comes and goes, but it is the wakefulness in each moment that is the most precious. And once you realize this, you begin to feel the power of silence. Not the silence of resignation, but the silence of deep understanding. Silence is not absence, but complete presence, fully engaging with everything that is happening without needing to add or subtract anything. It is in silence that you find a profound connection with everything around you. You no longer see the world as something outside of you, but instead, you feel yourself merging with everything, with all things, all people, all phenomena. You understand that you don't need to say much, and you don't need to do anything grand to change the world. True change comes from living authentically, fully true to your nature. In this presence, you no longer feel bound by societal pressures or the expectations others place upon you. You stop seeking approval from the outside, and instead, you realize that you are already complete within yourself. Your emotions, your thoughts, whether good or bad, are no longer enemies. You no longer chase after them, nor do you try to push them away. You simply let them come and go, like waves on the ocean, without being swept away by their current. True freedom doesn't come from controlling the world around you, but from no longer feeling controlled by yourself, by the standards and rules you've imposed upon yourself. When you stop fighting with yourself, you begin to understand that nothing is truly wrong or right. Everything exists in an invisible space, where distinctions no longer matter. You no longer judge yourself by what you have or haven't done, by your successes or failures. You understand that every action is part of the natural flow. It is the awareness in each step, in every small moment of life, that gives deep meaning. You don't need to search for some grand meaning. Everything has meaning when you live with full attention. When you let go of the need to become or achieve, you begin to live in acceptance. Not an acceptance of resignation, but an acceptance with a compassionate gaze. Without judgment, everything around you does not need to be perfect to be loved. And it doesn't need to achieve anything to have value. You see that each moment is a precious gift, even if it doesn't go according to the plan you had drawn. The things that once seemed small, breathing, walking, taking a sip of water, become sacred when you live with full awareness in them. With each step you take, you begin to realize that life is not a long journey to complete. It is simply being present in every moment. Sometimes, you don't need to do anything at all. Just stop and live with genuine presence. Nothing is more important than touching yourself. Touching the present without adding or taking anything away. When you let go of the burdens of the past and the future, you begin to realize that everything you need to live fully is already here. No need to go searching. No need to make everything something different. Everything is perfect just as it is. You will see that life is not a challenge you need to overcome. It's not a problem to solve or a race to win. It is simply a journey to live fully with everything. Not to reach a destination, but just to walk, just to feel. There's nowhere you need to go. Nothing you need to achieve. You only need to live. And in that living, you will find everything. It is in each of those moments that you realize happiness is not something to be found, but something you create through your presence in this life. And when you look at life this way, you will no longer see the distinction between success and failure, between joy and sorrow. Everything is part of the natural cycle, and you no longer need to analyze or explain them. All you need to do is live in presence, in the acceptance that everything has its reason. You don't need to understand everything. You just need to let it be. And when you let life be as it is, you will realize that you no longer have to do anything to find peace. It comes naturally, like a wordless companion, just waiting for you to open your heart and receive it. Life never asks you to achieve anything except to live authentically. When you let go of the images you've built about yourself, you will realize that you don't need to change anything to deserve this life. Everything is already perfect as it is. You only need to live truthfully, with full presence in each moment, and you will see that you lack nothing. The anxieties, the complications in your mind, will gradually fade away, not because you've attained something, but because you've stopped and clearly seen that everything is already present before your eyes. No need to add or change. When you live in wakefulness, you begin to see clearly that everything you've been searching for in life, from success to happiness, is actually just a reflection of yourself. Everything you want to achieve outside of you, you already have within, not because you lack anything, but because you haven't recognized the richness inside you. When you realize your own abundance, you no longer fear loss. You no longer feel deprived. You understand that everything that comes and goes in this life is part of the natural flow. Ungraspable, yet something to be cherished. At times, you may feel swept away by negative emotions, difficult situations. However, when you learn to let go and simply observe, you realize that these emotions are just passing clouds in the sky. Not your true essence. They come, they go, but you don't need to identify with them. You remain the vast sky, not limited by the clouds that pass by. And when you see this clearly, you will feel freedom. Freedom is not the absence of something, but the freedom in no longer being controlled by emotions or thoughts. This freedom does not come from controlling everything in life. In fact, true freedom is when you learn not to be controlled by things beyond your control. You can't control others. You can't control the situations that arise, but you can control how you respond to them. And in this control, you will feel the strength of freedom, not the strength of victory, but the strength of letting go and accepting. When you let go of all your fears, all the things you cannot change, you will see that life becomes much lighter. You don't need to worry about things outside your control. You just need to live. Just need to be present. And in that presence, you will see that life is not just a series of events that happen to you, but a continuous flow of opportunities to learn, to grow. And when you see everything through this lens, every difficulty, every challenge, becomes a lesson, an opportunity for you to understand yourself better. You don't need to search anywhere else. You begin to understand that true peace comes only from realizing that everything you need is already within you. You don't need to go outside to find a perfect feeling. You don't need to chase an ideal image of yourself. Perfection is not something distant, but the ability to live fully in each moment, accepting everything around you as part of yourself. When you live in this acceptance, you will feel light, free, and truly happy. And once you live like this, you will realize that nothing is meaningless. Every encounter, every moment, every challenge has its own value and is a valuable lesson. Everything contributes to your journey. You no longer worry about searching or doing more to achieve something grand. You simply need to live, simply need to be present. And in that presence, you will see that this life is truly full, rich, and worthy of appreciation. When you begin to live in that acceptance, you no longer worry about achieving goals or fulfilling expectations. Everything seems lighter, no longer a race. Life is no longer a burden or a task to complete, but a natural flow, where you simply need to stay, feel, and live in each moment. You no longer need to race against time, no longer need to do everything immediately, no longer need to prove anything. You only need to live fully with what is. Serenity does not come from achieving something, but from no longer feeling that you lack anything. Every moment when you live with a relaxed mindset, with the understanding that you lack nothing, you will see the world around you change. Not because reality changes, but because the way you perceive it has changed. You no longer see life as a challenge to overcome. You no longer feel like you are fighting against something. Instead, You begin to see that everything comes and goes. And you only need to witness it. You don't need to control. Don't need to manipulate. You don't need to try to change others. Nor do you need to change things that cannot be changed. All you need to do is live with the stillness in your heart. Live with full presence in everything that is happening. You will realize that when you no longer need to change everything, you become free. Freedom is not about controlling everything in life, but about no longer being controlled by life itself. You are no longer obsessed with the things you cannot control. You no longer fear losing something, because you understand that loss is just part of the natural process. Everything changes, and what matters is not what will come, but whether you can stand firm in that change. You can live with everything that comes, not because you are searching for something, but because you have found peace within yourself. You don't need to change or do anything special. You begin to see that your presence is all that is necessary. You don't need to make everything perfect. You don't need to accomplish anything to feel sufficient. You only need to be. And in that being, you realize that everything you've been searching for has always been present. You have always been whole. And this realization will help you see the beauty in every moment of life. No need to rush. No need to try to change anything. Just live in your presence. Everything will automatically become clear and peaceful. And when you stop searching, you begin to see this life as a flowing river. That river is never the same, but it always brings life to everything it flows through. You realize that everything, whether sad or joyful, is part of that river. You don't need to choose. You don't need to make decisions. You just need to let yourself go with the flow, trusting that life will take you where you need to go. Each step becomes a meaningful action. Each word becomes a full sharing. No longer worrying about what might happen. You learn to accept and love yourself in the most difficult moments. The things you cannot change become valuable lessons, helping you grow and understand yourself more. Each time you face a challenge, you no longer see it as an obstacle, but as an opportunity to learn, to understand, to love yourself more. You begin to see that everything in life has its value. It is facing difficulties that allows you to see your true nature. Life is not a journey to a final destination, but an ongoing process of change and discovery. Every moment contains endless potential to learn, to grow, to change. You don't need to race against time, nor do you need to hurry to overcome challenges. All you need to do is live fully in the present. Everything will come to you when you stop waiting, when you stop clinging to expectations, when you stop wanting life to follow a specific plan. You begin to see that it is in this letting go that everything truly begins. When you no longer fight against what happens, you not only learn how to accept, but you also learn how to love. Love is not something you have to strive to achieve, but a natural state when you realize that everything, every person, has its own value. What you once considered wrong or imperfect now becomes an indispensable part of your journey. You understand that nothing is meaningless, and every experience, whether pain or joy, contributes to your growth. Peace is not something you can search for elsewhere, but something you carry within yourself. When you stop searching, you begin to feel the natural peace. Each step becomes a firm step, without hurry, without worry. Every breath you take is no longer just something you do to survive, but a sacred act, an act of gratitude for life. You understand that every moment has value, not because of what you gain from it, but because of your presence in it. You no longer seek happiness outside of yourself. Happiness is not something that can be grasped. It is a state you can live in, no matter the circumstances. When you live with compassion and wakefulness, you begin to realize that happiness is the full presence in everything around you. Nothing is separate. Nothing is an exception. Happiness is not something you must wait to have. It is already in every step you take, every breath you breathe, every moment you are truly present. Life is not a problem to be solved, but a dance you take part in. You don't need to try to fit in, to succeed, or to please anyone. When you live true to your nature, you automatically blend into the rhythm of the universe, and everything around you adjusts accordingly. You will no longer feel stuck in thoughts, emotions, or unrealistic desires. You will see that every step you take leads you to a place that is inseparable from yourself. When you stop trying to change the world will start to change according to you. Each step in life doesn't need to be a grand action, but an action of presence. Sometimes, just listening, just sitting still, just knowing that you are alive, that is already a miracle. Life is not a race to become someone, but an opportunity to be yourself. It is in accepting yourself and everything that happens around you that you find true freedom. You don't need to achieve anything. You don't need to do anything. You just need to be a person with everything you have. And in that, you are already whole. And when you begin to live with that freedom, you will realize that everything can change when you change the way you look at it. You don't need to change the world. You only need to change the way you look at it. When you look at the world with love, with wakefulness, you will see everything becoming more beautiful, more vibrant, more meaningful. Every action, every gesture, every glance, all become meaningful actions when you live with full presence. Life becomes easier when you stop resisting it. When you stop seeking perfection and instead accept the imperfections in yourself and in life. When you live with wakefulness, you begin to realize that life is not a journey to achieve grand goals, but a continuous process of learning how to live fully in each moment. You no longer need to search for happiness in distant places, nor wait for some future day to feel peace. Happiness is not a destination, it is a state you can choose to live in every day. In each breath, each step, each glance, each word, you understand that full presence in this life is the key to living a complete and meaningful life. With every step you take, you learn to live without needing to change anything around you. You realize that everything is perfect in its own natural state. Life is not about what you achieve, but about how you live in what you have. You don't need to make everything change, nor do you need to control life or seek perfection. When you begin living with presence, you understand that everything around you has meaning, and all you need to do is live fully in those moments. Transformation doesn't come from what you do, but from how you perceive this life. You no longer see life as something to fight for, or as a race to achieve something. When you stop chasing external goals, you begin to realize that life cannot be measured by achievements or material things. It is simply the presence of you in each moment. It is in that presence that you realize that nothing, except for yourself, is important. You don't need to change the world or everything around you. When you change the way you perceive things and live in wakefulness, the world will naturally change too. When you stop searching, you will clearly see that you lack nothing. Worries about the future, fears about the past, all begin to fade away. You learn to live in the present, in each moment, without getting caught up in thoughts about what's to come or what has passed. You don't need to worry about what hasn't happened, nor do you need to regret what's gone. Every moment becomes an opportunity to live fully, to feel life in each breath. The wakefulness in every moment gives you an indescribable strength, a strength that doesn't come from controlling everything, but from letting go and accepting. It's not that life is free of difficulties or challenges, but you no longer feel controlled by them. You are no longer swept away by negative emotions or worries about the future. You begin to clearly see that each challenge is an opportunity for you to learn and grow. No longer feeling like you are fighting against life. You understand that each thing in life is part of the journey, and every step has its own value. You don't need to be perfect to feel enough. Perfection comes from accepting what you have, accepting yourself and the difficulties and challenges life brings. Peace is not the absence of suffering, but the ability to live with suffering without letting it dominate you. When you realize that suffering is part of life, you will see that it is not something to avoid. Suffering will come and go, but the peace within you remains. You no longer feel the need to escape from negative feelings, but instead, you learn to live with them. You don't push the emotions away. You embrace them with compassion and acceptance. It is in this acceptance that you find freedom, freedom not from avoiding challenges, but from facing them without feeling controlled by them. Nothing in this life is fixed. Everything comes and goes. And when you understand this, you will no longer fear change. You learn to let go of what's past, not clinging to what may no longer be. When you no longer fear change, you will realize that you are freer than ever. Everything around you is no longer something you need to worry about or control. You only need to live fully in each moment, not searching, not waiting. When you no longer need to chase anything, you will realize that peace has always been within you. In life, nothing is truly stable. Everything changes continuously, and that is not a bad thing. Instead of fearing change, you begin to understand that it is part of life. Everything changes, so you don't need to try to hold on to things. Life is not a fixed picture you must protect, but an endless flow where every second carries its own freshness. You don't need to struggle to control everything. Just live within that change, and everything will become easier. When you live with letting go, you will realize that you no longer feel you must cling to what's past. The past is no longer something you need to relive, and the future is no longer something you need to reach for. It is in presence in the now that you find freedom. You don't need to depend on any external object to feel happy because you've realized that happiness doesn't come from the outside. Happiness comes from your presence in every moment. When you live fully with what you have, you will see that this life is truly complete. Not because you have everything, but because you've learned to appreciate the smallest things. What you once thought was necessary, the things you believed would bring you happiness, suddenly cease to matter. You no longer feel lacking, no longer crave something more to complete yourself. You begin to understand that you are already enough. You don't need everything the world says you should have. You only need to live with what matters to you. And in this realization, you feel free. Freedom is not the absence of pain, but the ability to face challenges without being controlled by them. You realize that you don't need to become someone else to be loved or accepted. You only need to be yourself, and that alone is precious. You don't need to prove your worth through achievements or possessions. You are enough. Everything you need is already within you. You just haven't recognized it yet. And when you do, you won't feel the need to search anymore. You won't feel lacking, because you understand that life isn't a race to win something. Things come and go, but you remain rooted, living fully without worrying about what's next. Life isn't about control. You cannot control others or every situation. But you can control how you react. True freedom comes from refusing to let the uncontrollable dictate your life. You are no longer carried away by events or trapped in thoughts of the past or future. You begin to live fully in each moment, not to change anything, but because you understand that this presence brings true peace. When you pause and live in the present, you realize you don't need to go looking for happiness. Happiness is not found outside yourself. It isn't acquired by possessions or goals. It is self-acceptance. It is the ability to live with what you have without feeling deprived. It is inner peace. And when you understand this, life becomes lighter than ever. Awakening is not a state to attain, nor do you need to become someone else to live in wakefulness. Wakefulness is simply the awareness that you are always present in each moment. That you don't need to go looking for happiness or perfection. You just need to live fully with yourself and all that surrounds you, and everything aligns. When you live in wakefulness, you'll no longer feel lacking or fearful of the future. Everything will come in its time, and you will be ready. Once you live with such awareness, you'll see that nothing in life is meaningless. Every person, event, moment has value. You no longer regard the world as foreign. You see yourself as part of it. You begin to understand that everything has its reason. You don't feel the need to explain or reason everything. You only need to live. Aware that everything unfolding is part of your natural journey. When you begin to live fully aware of each moment, you will realize nothing is random. Everything, from grand events to the smallest details, carries its own meaning. You don't need to search for reasons or explanations for what happens, because you recognize that not everything must be understood. Sometimes, simply living the moment and doing nothing allows clarity to arise. You don't need to chase what might happen next or yearn for what has passed, because everything is already here, right now. When you live like this, life no longer feels burdensome. You no longer feel the need to chase perfection or success. You don't need to race against time or compete with anyone. Things will come when they come. You understand that life isn't a race, but a journey to learn, to grow, and to become fully yourself. Every day, every moment, every emotion carries its own significance, and you only need to recognize it. You begin to see that full presence in every moment brings true peace. You don't need to control or change anything. You only need to live and to simply be. When you stop chasing desires and expectations, life becomes lighter. You no longer feel lacking. No longer feel you need something to be perfect. You begin to realize that perfection isn't something to achieve. It is the ability to live fully with yourself. In every moment, when you stop seeking external perfection, you'll see that everything is already perfect as it is. Acceptance, self-love, and living moment by moment, that is what truly matters. And from there, you begin to see that you don't need to do anything extraordinary. You just need to live sincerely and fully. No longer seeking anything outside yourself. You realize that life isn't an endless search. You don't need to go anywhere for peace or happiness, because you carry them within. Peace doesn't come from your surroundings, but from the awareness that everything has value and contributes to your journey. Living in the present, without search, without worry, without demand, is the key to finding tranquility. When you live with complete acceptance, you no longer feel incomplete or needing change. You stop comparing yourself to others. No longer feel you must become someone else. You begin to love yourself, not because of your achievements, but simply because you are you. This love is unconditional, not based on achievements or failures, but on your presence, on being yourself. It's a love that needs no reason or explanation, just full presence in yourself. Peace arrives when you stop comparing and competing. When you no longer seek approval from others, you feel free. Freedom is not the absence of trouble, but the ability to live with everything without being controlled by it. You no longer feel the need to change everything to fit the world, or wear a mask to be accepted. You just need to be yourself. And that full presence, that release of craving and perfectionism, brings you a life of wholeness and calm. Life is not a path you must walk, it's a space you inhabit. You don't need to pursue anything, don't need to achieve anything. All you need is to live fully in the present. In each moment, every second can bring you peace and joy, not because you gained something, but because you've realized that happiness can't be found outside. Happiness is the awareness and wholehearted living of what you already have. And it's this mindfulness in everyday life, in every moment, that grants you true freedom. As you begin to realize that life isn't a journey with a fixed destination, you gradually open up to a freedom you never knew before. You no longer feel bound by goals, expectations, or social demands. You stop seeing life as a series of tasks to complete, and instead feel it as a continuous flow of moments worth living. You no longer chase perfection, because you've recognized that imperfection is beautiful. Everything around you, whether challenge or joy, contributes to the grand tapestry you're part of. No need to worry, no need to chase. You start living in a profound freedom, a freedom born from simply letting go. That freedom doesn't come from doing nothing, but from living without being governed by expectations or mental programming. You are no longer obsessed with success or failure. You begin to understand that everything that comes into your life is part of a process of learning and growth. When you stop trying to change everything, you realize that life doesn't need to change for you to experience peace. Peace comes from living fully in every moment, no hurry to go anywhere, no pressure to do anything, just being who you are. Every moment of life can become a profound lesson, if you are aware enough to notice it. You don't need to wait for a special time or search for a transcendent experience to feel life's richness. Every time you pause, breathe mindfully, live in presence, you see that life's truth isn't far away. It's in simple, overlooked moments, and in that attention, you uncover hidden beauty in every detail of living. Freed from the fatigue of pursuing ideals or goals, you realize life isn't a race. You begin living with a relaxed sense of ease, understanding that you don't need to rush anywhere, worry about the future, or regret the past. Every moment is an opportunity to live fully, to honor yourself. No need for grand accomplishments. The perfection is in living wholeheartedly with what surrounds you. With sincerity, kindness, acceptance, and self-love, when you no longer feel compelled to prove your worth, life becomes much lighter and easier. You no longer fear obstacles or challenges. You understand that challenges are just part of life, and they don't define you. You learn to face whatever comes, not to change it, but to live honestly in that moment. You understand that each trial, each difficulty, has its own value and is part of your journey. When you recognize this, you realize you can face anything without feeling defeated, without needing to escape. Every moment becomes an opportunity to learn. You no longer feel outside of life, you become an essential part of it. Every person you meet, every situation you experience, offers a lesson, a doorway to growth and self-understanding. When you grasp that life isn't a journey toward a destination, but a continuous process of learning, you feel freer than ever. No pressure, no lack, no need to prove. You simply live, with everything you are, and find yourself complete. Life isn't something you can fully control. You can't stop change. You can't control others, but you can control how you respond. And in that control, you find freedom. You don't need to change others or circumstances. You only need to shift your perspective. When you change how you see, everything around you changes. All things and all people become better when seen with compassion and understanding. When you begin to realize that life isn't a destination but a journey, you see that you don't need a goal to live. You only need to live fully in the present. In each moment you have acceptance, releasing unrealistic expectations. That brings you a peace you've never known. This peace isn't absence of challenge, but the capacity to stay grounded even in the most difficult moments. When you live with that awareness, you no longer feel the need to race against time or life. Every moment becomes an opportunity to perfect yourself. Life isn't something you control or force. It flows in its own rhythm, and you can't change that. However, you can change how you live in it. You can choose how to respond to life, to inevitable events. You can learn to live mindfully, to observe without being swept away. In that presence, you begin to feel freedom. Freedom isn't the absence of hardship. It's the ability to face all hardship without letting it control your life. When you begin to let go of worries and negative thoughts, you realize you no longer feel pressured to achieve anything. You don't need to prove yourself to anyone. You just need to live as you are, no additions, no subtractions, no effort to change for others' expectations. Every moment you live is complete. There's no need to seek happiness elsewhere or go anywhere to feel it. Happiness isn't found outside yourself. It's not something you can acquire elsewhere. You no longer feel the need to explain everything. You don't need to clarify what's happening or understand why things unfold as they do. You learn to live in the unknown, without needing every answer or reason. You understand that life doesn't need explanations, it just needs to be lived. When you pause and feel the life around you, you'll see that everything holds its own value. Understanding flows naturally when you live in the now, without feeling the need to change or adjust anything. Every person you meet, every event in your life, is a priceless lesson. You don't need to search for lessons, they come naturally when you are present. When you open your heart and receive life as it comes and goes, you'll realize life isn't a series of problems to fix but a succession of opportunities to learn and grow. Each challenge, each struggle, is a part of your path, helping you understand yourself more deeply. And within those challenges, you discover true strength. When you stop seeking perfection, you recognize that life doesn't need to be flawless to be loved. You don't have to fit an ideal mold to be accepted. In your imperfections, you find your own perfection. Every flaw, mistake, or failure is an essential part of your journey. You learn to love yourself, not for what you've done, but for who you are. You don't need to do anything extraordinary to deserve love. You begin loving yourself through acceptance. And that love brings you genuine freedom. Freedom doesn't come from changing the world. It comes from changing how you perceive it. When you stop chasing perfection or answers for every life event, you realize life becomes lighter. You stop worrying about what you can't control. And you no longer feel pressured by hardship. You just live fully in each moment. In that letting go, you find peace. As you live in that peace, you see life isn't a challenge to overcome, it's an opportunity to learn, grow, and truly feel life in each moment. You don't need to search for anything, because everything you need is already within you. You don't need to become someone else to be enough, you just need to be yourself. When you live in presence, you'll feel freedom and peace right here, in this very moment. Finally, looking back on your journey, you realize that what you needed to do was not change your life or force it in a certain direction, but to recognize that it was already whole. Everything you've been seeking externally already lives within you. When you stop chasing and turn inward, stop demanding life give you something, that's when you truly find peace. Every moment in life is an opportunity to live fully, to learn and grow. When you stop worrying about the future and stop regretting the past, you begin living in full presence. Each step, each breath, each word, each emotion can become part of your awareness. That's how you connect with yourself and with the world. Nothing is random. Everything has its purpose. And life will guide you toward what you need, not what you want. And in that process, you realize you don't need to change yourself to be worthy of life. You don't need to become someone else. And you don't need perfection to deserve love. Love and peace are always available. And they come when you learn to accept yourself. When you love yourself, you begin loving everything around you. You'll see this world is not strange, it is part of you. And you are part of it. We often view life through a lens of lack. But in reality, it is infinitely abundant. Everything you need is already within you, not because you have everything, but because you've learned to perceive life with an open heart and a mind free from attachments to what doesn't really matter. Only when you realize this do you truly experience freedom. Freedom is not lack. It is letting go. Releasing burdens that aren't yours. Releasing the need to change everything. Releasing everything that keeps you from being yourself. And when you live in that freedom, everything becomes gentle. You no longer feel the need to strive to become someone else. You no longer chase expectations or standards set by the world. You live true to yourself, without needing validation from anyone but yourself. Only when you live fully as yourself can you bring goodness into the world. So you may ask, how do I live with this awareness? With this freedom? In every moment? The answer is simple. Let go. Let go of unnecessary burdens. Let go of outdated thoughts that no longer serve you. Release worries about the future and regrets about the past. Return to the present, live in each breath, each step, with gratitude and acceptance, and you will discover the peace you've always been seeking. Those moments, simple yet profound, are the precious gems of life. Sometimes, you don't need to do anything special or change anything. Just be fully present in those moments. Live honestly with what's happening. And you've found a complete life. You can't control life, but you can choose how to respond. You can choose to live in presence, acceptance, and love. That is the simplest and the longest path to true peace. So let us walk this path together. It is never too late. And every moment is a chance for you to change, to live fully. Remember, in each moment, you already have everything you need, not somewhere far away, not in grand things, but right within yourself. All it takes is for you to look inward, to live with presence, and to accept everything that comes and goes in this life. Thank you for walking this journey with me. I hope these reflections have helped you find a few moments of peace and mindfulness in your life. If you found this video helpful, do not forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you will not miss any of the upcoming videos. Let us continue to walk side by side, exploring deeper lessons and seeking peace in our everyday lives. Thank you for watching, and I look forward to seeing you again in the next video. Please feel free to share this video if you think it might help someone else on their own journey towards stillness and inner peace. Wishing you a day filled with peace and happiness.